Well, hello everyone and welcome to Project Management ADMG 374, Chapter 3 and Chapter 4 of the reading. Let me go ahead and give you a nice overview of this. So what the key focuses are in Chapter 3 are on the project management process groups. So first of all, let's define a process. And a process is typically a set of actions, tasks, steps, activities that you do in order to achieve a particular result. Project management is just a number of interlinked processes. So for everything that we do in project management, we have a set of processes that we can follow to achieve what we're trying to accomplish. So process groups are just that. We have 5 process groups in project management, and they include initiating, planning, executing, monitoring and controlling, and closing. And within each of these process groups, there are a number of process or activity related type things that we do. So I love this particular graphic because it shows what the typical project managers will spend on each of these process groups as they execute a project. And then I wanted to show you the alpha project managers, or the project managers that are typically considered the kind of rock star type project managers. So notice that we start from the bottom and we go up, and notice that normally initiating a project is the least amount of time, but alpha project managers spend a little more time in this area. Good reasons, and we'll talk about those in a minute. Planning. Notice that your alpha project managers spend almost twice as much time planning as they do normal regular project managers. And then in the executing, the alpha project managers actually spend less time working on the executing. Why is that? Well, maybe because they planned better, so they don't have as much executing things that they have to be concerned about or worried about. They not as many fires to put out as other project managers, because they may have done a better job in the planning stage. And then of course monitoring and controlling and closing. Notice that of course our biggest area of any project where the project manager spends their most time, regardless of whether they are a project manager or an alpha rockstar project manager, is really in executing. So keep that in the back of your mind. Let's talk about pre-initiation. So before we actually even get into project initiation, it's a good idea to find out what's being kicked around, right? To get the rumors, to find out what's being discussed with respect to this particular project. So we want to lay some groundwork before it even gets off the ground. Senior project managers often perform senior managers often perform several pre-initiation tasks, including looking to find out what needs to be done, what is our scope of work, how much time and how much money do we get to spend. Again, triple constraint questions. What are we going to do? How much money do we have to spend? And when does it need to be done? Triple constraint, right? We identify our project sponsor. We need to know who we are going to be getting money from, and possibly who we're going to be getting requirements from. We are looking at selecting a project manager, developing a business case for the project. Take a look at table 3-2. Business case. Remember, we always do projects for a business reason. We never do projects just simply because it sounds like fun. We do projects because there's a good, solid business reason for doing them. We meet with the project manager to review the processes and expectations for managing the projects, and then determine how the project would be divided into possibly smaller projects, because sometimes a project may be extreme and it may be very, very large. It may be that the project can be broken into smaller projects that can be completed for a little bit better success. Sometimes we want to get something into the hands of our people as quickly as possible, so we might break it into a smaller set of projects that way. So those are some pre-initiation tasks that we might want to do. But then project initiation is the formal kickoff of the project, and it includes recognizing and starting the new project, formally getting it off the ground. And during this particular portion, we are developing the project charter and we're identifying our stakeholders. Those are the two big things that we're doing in project initiation. And the project charter is our formal document that authorizes us to begin the project. Once we have this all done, we move into the project planning process group, which is all about how we are going to guide the execution of the project. Okay, so planning is all about preparing our project management plan, the various documents that go into putting together the project management plan, which will guide the execution of our project. Now, there are 10 knowledge areas. There are 5 process groups and 10 knowledge areas in the PMI's PMBOK guide to project management. Each one of these knowledge areas has very specific planning information and key inputs and key outputs. So in the project planning phase, some of the key outputs are a team contract, a scope statement, a work breakdown structure, your schedule, your cost, your budget information, risk information, a quality management plan, a stakeholder management plan. You probably will have you may have a supplier management plan if you're contracting outside resources. There are a number of different documents that go into making up a project management plan, which will guide the execution of your project. Then once we finish our planning, we go into project execution. Usually, again, that takes up the most time and the most resources. Project managers, here we use our leadership skills because there are so many things that will happen during the execution of a project. And again, I want to really stress to everyone, project managers are not managers, right? Project managers are typically do not have anyone that formally reports to them, and they do not typically have any authority. So here you are trying to manage people who don't report to you and have absolutely no reason to work for you unless they've been asked to. So project managers, you notice that we don't refer to using management skills, but we refer to using leadership skills, because here you have to get people to do stuff for you who don't work for you and have really no reason to. So we talk a lot about that later on. Okay, so table 3-11 on page 111 lists some of the executing processes and the outputs. Be sure to pay some attention to that and understand what some of the deliverables are in those areas. A milestone report, page 112 to 113, helps focus on identifying and achieving the major milestones within a project. Now, a milestone is an amount of work that is completed, and when it's completed, you typically have some deliverable that you're able to come back and say, okay, here is this deliverable. After all of this work, we have this milestone. Okay, so keep that one in the back of your mind as well. Monitoring and controlling overlaps project execution, because during monitoring and controlling, it's not a separate phase in and of itself. So don't think of it as a phase, but think of it as a process group, because while we are executing, we are monitoring and controlling our project. And what we're doing is we're making sure that we are executing the project, meeting the objectives, so that we are on plan. And if we deviate from project plan, we take corrective action to get back on project plan. Okay, project monitoring and controlling can occur during all phases of the life cycle, and our outputs from this process group include performance reports, change requests, and updates. In our class, you are going to be doing some of this monitoring and controlling in week 3, 6, and 9 as you deliver project management lab 1, 2, and 3, which will be some performance reporting. Actually, in 6 and 9, you're going to do some performance reporting. You're going to address how the project is moving forward. So that's part of the monitoring and controlling part. Project closing. Now, do not discount how important project closing is, because here is where we are gaining stakeholder and customer acceptance of our final goods and services. This is a critical thing. We think we can execute a project. We can think that we have done perfect. We did the most perfect website ever. We created the best website on the planet, and it meets every requirement that the user had. But if the stakeholders or project sponsors do not like it for whatever reason, and there can be a bunch of reasons, we failed. And this is closing the project, is gaining that approval. Now, how do you assure that you get approval? You are monitoring your stakeholders' expectations, and you are working with your stakeholders throughout the project, so there are no surprises at the end, because you have been working with them. You know when there are problems, you've kept them informed, you've had meetings with them, and there are going to be no big surprises when you come to the closing table. Okay, so even if projects are not completed, they should be closed out. And remember, I mentioned projects can be terminated for a variety of reasons, not necessarily all good ones, so you definitely want to close out a project even if it's not terminated to completion. Outputs include lessons learned reports and other project files that may be needed. Most projects include a final report or presentation to senior management, senior sponsorship, to show what the project was, what we did, and how we met requirements and expectations. All right, so Chapter 4 talks about project integration management. Now, project integration management is the first knowledge area, the first of the 10 knowledge areas that we look at. Project integration is about the ability to look at the big picture of all the project and manage all of those details of the project, integrate all of those details together. So a lot of new project managers have a tough time looking at that big picture, getting up to that 30,000 foot level and looking all across the project. Now, when I talk about looking at the big picture, I have an image that's coming up that'll show you a little bit more about what we're talking about. In project integration management, we work on developing the charter and working with our stakeholders so that we get what they want, so that we formally know what our project is going to be all about. What are their requirements? What are we going to do? And then we develop a project management plan, which is a number of documents that come together so that we know how we're going to execute, what guides our execution, and then we direct and manage the work in project integration. Monitoring and controlling is overseeing activities that meet performance objectives, performing integrated change control. A lot of projects get sunk because scope of work gets added to projects without a proper change control. Well, when you add a bunch of additional work to a project that wasn't originally identified, because remember, we're going to plan our schedule based on the work that we've been given. Well, if somebody comes along, we've got our schedule in place, we've got our budget in place, and then somebody comes along and dumps a whole bunch of new work into the project, well, that's going to impact our schedule. How are we going to get that work done in the time frame we've been given? And it may impact our budget. How are we going to budget for the additional work that needs to be done? So change control is critical to assuring that we don't add scope of work that isn't approved, and that we seek to get additional funds and additional schedule to our project. So do not underestimate the importance of change control. And of course, we want to close out the project, and we want to formally do that. All right, this is the image that I was referring to, the 10 knowledge areas: scope, time, cost, quality, human resources, communication, risk, procurement, and stakeholder management, and how each one of these feeds into integration management, because integration management is that big picture. We're looking across all of these other knowledge areas. Okay, so those are your 10 knowledge areas, but I really want you to pay attention to the fact that integration management is that real key that pulls everything together. Okay, I really encourage you to take a good look at table 3-1, because what I love about this table is that across the top, you'll notice that we've got the process groups: initiating, planning, executing, monitoring and controlling, and closing. And then down the left column are all the knowledge areas. And where you have a knowledge area and a process group that come together, it will define what is done in that area. So for example, under initiating process group in the integration management, we're developing the project charter. Under time management, monitoring and controlling, we are controlling the schedule. Under planning for time management, we're planning the schedule, we're defining activities, sequencing activities, estimating durations, and we're developing the schedule. Those are the tasks that we are doing for time management in the planning process group. Please, please, please take some time to take a good look at that and maybe bookmark that particular table, because I think it's really important. All right, so now on to what you need to know for these two chapters, chapter 3 and chapter 4. You should understand the need to develop a methodology for executing projects. Why is that important? Why do we want to even spend our time with a standard set of processes by which we execute projects? What happens during each of the process groups? And we kind of covered that a little bit. What are some of the deliverables from each of the process groups? The deliverables being the outputs of the process group. What is a project charter, and what are the project charter components? Your textbook is going to give you a good example of that. You will be creating a project charter in this class for your project. What is project integration, and how do we manage across all knowledge areas and process groups? Don't forget to look at that table 3-1, really a good one. Remember that the project integration is all about being able to see the whole project and how all the components fit together. What are some methods for selecting projects? Also in chapter 4, there's a good deal on project selection. Now you also want to take some time to review the sample project charters that are there and get comfortable with the information that is captured that goes into a project charter. Understand the term project baseline. We're going to be baselining our project probably around module 5 or 6. So get a good idea for what that term means. Understand the importance of change control and configuration management. I think I tried to stress that for you. And then how does project management software assist you in the process of managing projects? We will be using Microsoft Project in this class. You'll be learning it on a very minimal level, but you'll get some exposure to that. And but hopefully by the end of the class you'll be able to understand how Microsoft Project, a software, would be really valuable in helping you. So if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to either email me, Skype me, or you may call my home office. The numbers are here. Have a great week. Don't hesitate to let me know how I can help. Take care.